Assalamu alaikum and good morning, everyone. How are you doing? We hope you're doing well, and welcome back to the last session for the webinar series. We are covering secondary level teachers. This is session 5. Welcome to everyone who came back today from yesterday, and good morning. Hope you're all keeping well. Reading the comments as they're coming in. Thank you so much. Thank you again for joining us and for your time for this webinar. This is the last webinar of the series that we're covering for first semester course books for Mega Goal 1, Mega Goal 3, and Mega Goal 5. We covered intermediate last week and the week before elementary. So this is the last day of our webinar. This is session 5. This is for secondary teachers. So just making sure you're in the right session. This is the last session for today for this webinar series. So we don't have a session in the afternoon at 1 p.m. today. You're free to have lunch, enjoy yourself, have a good evening, treat yourself for completing the course. But yes, this morning we are going to cover the last session, which is for secondary teachers again. As usual, before I go on any further, just going to check if my audio is all right and you can hear me. It's on the right side of your screen, hand icon. Please press it if you can hear me. Or if you need any, excellent, lots of hands going up. And in case you need to connect to the audio, because once you log into the webinar, you will have to. This is just there in the chat box for you. Going to the moderators for today, we've got myself, Minerva, my colleague, Nikos, Medani, and Nasir. We are here in the background to help you along. If you have any questions or if you face any trouble, feel free to drop that in the chat box for us. If you face any trouble, the Q&A will be able to help out. We're sad to let the night go today. Yes, this was a really enjoyable series, but it's going to be our last session today. So thanks, Sanai, for all your patience with us and being here.
Thank you. Thank you, Suresh, for all your help.
Yeah, she's a teacher educator, editor, and a co-author for the Saudi edition. She's done numerous workshops by now in Saudi Arabia for both supervisor and teachers. So yes, thank you again, Danai. We're so happy, but yeah, bittersweet that you're leaving and this is the last session. Quick housekeeping. I'm not going to cover everything today because you won't have to register for another session that's tomorrow, so we won't go over that. Once you're in WebEx, you will have to connect to the audio. So I've just dropped in how you could do that. Then I also refers to a handout during the session, and I should drop this now so you can download it. Let me just quickly find that for you. This is the handout that's for session 5. If you click on the link, you will be able to see 2 handouts, handout 1 and 2. So you can download it, you can share it with your colleagues. And in case you have missed the previous sessions, I'm going to drop the link to all 5 handouts, all 5 sessions that we covered. So you are able to download the handouts that we did. In case you have managed to miss any of the sessions, make sure you save these and you will be able to download them. Feel free to share them with your colleagues as well. So that's absolutely fine. Coming back to our housekeeping. So just make sure that you've closed down any high networking apps during the webinar, such as Netflix, YouTube, or any gaming app, because this will affect the bandwidth of the webinar. We're getting a lot of queries about certificates. As I mentioned before, it's going to take some time for the certificates. People have logged in using their colleague's link. I'm sure you don't want to get certificates under the name of your colleague. So while we try to sort that out, please be patient with us and understand that the certificates are going to take a while because we need to make sure who logged in for what session. But as we said, it's going to come up after November 19th. So today is November 19th. So by next week or the week after, you should have your certificates. And this, you can tell this to your colleagues as well, please. It's across all 3 levels. So for elementary, intermediate, and secondary as well. You will receive it via email. So you will have an email. You will just have to download it. Maha, if you cannot hear anything, you will have to connect to the audio. So let me quickly drop that in for you. Okay, and the last thing is you are automatic. Oh yes, I forgot to cover the Q&A. On the right side chat box, on the right side Q&A, please use the chat box if you have to engage with the presenter. You have any comments, and use the Q&A box if you have any questions for us. So those two are the functions that you have on the right side. The chat box is enabled for everyone, so you will not have a problem to be able to chat. You are automatically marked present in this session. You don't have to mark your attendance anywhere. Once you log into the webinar, you are considered as present, and it's pretty automatic, so we know what time you logged in and what time you log out. So don't worry about getting yourself marked. However, you also see only yourself, your name on the right side. It's not because you are the only one attending the webinar. We have 691 people so far, and the number is going up. So don't worry about you're the only one attending the webinar. You have your colleagues. It's just because of GDPR purpose and privacy, you won't be able to see their name in the webinar. You will only see your name. Similarly, when you're chatting, you can only see your chat. You will not be able to see the chat for other people that are commenting, your colleagues that are commenting, but then I usually read them out for us, so you can follow along. Don't feel like you are missing out on anything at all. And I guess that's all. Unless you have any questions for me, I'm going to wait, and then I can give it to Danai. Got it. Excellent. Thank you so much. If there's anything, just drop me a message and I can answer your question. You need all the handouts. I will just drop it again. Over to you, Danai. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Suresh. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming back. Thank you for joining. For those who've joined this session for the first time, haven't attended any others. Before I carry on with what we're going to discuss today, I'd just like to say one thing about the handouts. The handouts are worksheets. They're for you to think about and work on and reflect on different issues and think of solutions and so on. So those, if you want the handouts and you want to work with them, it would be great to work with colleagues, okay? So if you can do collaborative work with the handouts so you can exchange ideas. Thank you very much. Okay, so we'll carry on with today's session. Okay, I know the title is very ambitious. Obviously, we are not going to cover all the areas exhaustively. There's no way we can do that. But before I carry on, I would like to make sure that we're all talking about the same thing. Because we often use the same word to mean different things, right? And actually, one of the talks that's been going on recently has been on e-learning, what people mean to e-learning, and basically different people mean different things. So before we carry on, what I would like to make absolutely clear is that we're going to be discussing issues that are relevant for us as teachers in the direct learning context. Sorry. What I'm trying to say is this is not an administration session, okay? So we are talking about the very specific learning context where you've got who, you, the teacher, the learners, where, in class, in the classroom or online. Sorry. Learning, developing the language in order to communicate through speech or writing, during the lesson, outside the lesson, and how you do that, how you learn is as we've discussed through a number of different through different skills and different topics. And the why, the why, because this language is a global medium. Your students will need to use it in the future, be it professionally or educationally and for academic purposes. You don't know which. It will differ. So many reasons there. And of course, what you also mention each time is the test, the final test, okay? Which is basically, once again, summative assessment, and it's not formative, it's not interim, so we're interested in ongoing assessment so we can help people learn more. So we're talking strictly about the learning context that concerns us as teachers, addressing our learners, using whatever resources we have at our disposal under different circumstances. Okay, so do we mean what we say or say what we mean again? Can I ask you to please think for a minute about what these words mean to you? Okay, when you use these words or these collocations, these phrases, what exactly do you refer to? What comes to mind? So the words are resources, thinking, knowledge, and the collocations are managing resources, critical thinking, creative thinking, knowledge sources. Can we just begin with a separate word? Resources. What do we mean when we say resources? Hello? Anyone there? Okay, yeah, tangible resources, books, videos, the internet, knowledge, okay, your room, if you have a classroom, okay, website, tools, okay, dictionaries, knowledge, research, search, all of that, good, okay, great, everything produces information, okay, everything that you can access for information. Dictionaries, yes, great. Okay, what about thinking material? Yes, very good. Previous knowledge, yes. High level of thinking, yep. Okay, family, yes, everybody, the people we know. So we're also talking about knowledge through experience and sociocultural and all that. Creativity, okay, fine, super. All right, what about thinking? Thinking. What does thinking sort of bring to mind? Activities, world, analysis, imagination, feedback, work, producing ideas. If you think of the mind, what kind of state is the mind in then? If it's thinking, analyzing, yes, analyzing, synthesizing, justifying, brainstorming, okay, creating new ideas. Okay, fine, good. So it's active. So you've got cognitive processing going on. Okay, what about knowledge? Information, understanding, experience, context, yes, contextual knowledge, okay. Experience of knowledge that's related to experience, previous learning, background, okay. The ability to learn, general reading, thank you for the ability to learn, yes. We're talking about knowledge and basically building up on the knowledge that's already there. We don't treat learners as sort of inactive, passive recipients of knowledge. That's not the idea. Okay, great. Okay, so this is our basis. This is what we're talking about, and this is really what we've been talking about all along, yeah? And keeping your learners active, involved, thinking, learning. Okay, very quick run through individual learner factors. I'm not going to go into the different series. I've got 3 here, but these are things that you've been exposed to. Okay, Ellis, in psycholinguistics, age, personality, this is classic, age, personality, attitude, aptitude, intelligence, cognitive style, motivation. The other one that you are very familiar with is different learning styles: visual, auditory, kinesthetic, tactile. So people who learn through listening, through seeing things, visual reinforcement, who move, who need to move, do things to learn, tactile, who can touch. Multiple intelligences is a theory that looks at not only logical, mathematical, and linguistic, because most tests do seem to focus on those things, not seem to, they do focus on those things, and actually formal education has focused on those two for hundreds of years more. Okay, so multiple intelligences has opened. Spatial has to do with spatial awareness, space, and how that might affect your perception and coordination and so on and so forth. Okay, so we've got different intelligences. So this is more inclusive. It will include people who might not be so, if you like, so talented in linguistic and logical mathematical intelligences, but they might be very talented, gifted in other intelligences. It is important, again, because it makes us identify more abilities, more potential in learners, and it helps us be more inclusive. If you think about the times that you mentioned, for example, you've mentioned in sessions weak students. Okay, I try not to label them as weak students because they might be weak, as you say, and not performing very well in what you're doing, but what you're doing might not be addressing one of their intelligences, which is quite important. So this is why, yes, there is a reason, though, usually for low achievers, so it's always good to reflect on that. So, for example, some of the people you mentioned, you have some shy learners who don't participate a lot, who need another way and method. Yes, Munir. Okay, who needs to be dealt with differently. Okay, how do you deal with that? Do you know what they can do? If you only look at the traditional prescriptive way, in terms of linguistic, logical, mathematical, you don't know what their strengths might be. It's good to know. And in the way we work nowadays, there is a place, there is space, there is room for all intelligences, okay? So, for example, when you're working on a project, when you're researching, when you have to design a slide, when you have to design a poster, okay? Everything goes in. So everything counts. And anyway, if you think of life, all of these intelligences come up. The interpersonal intelligence has to do, yes, weak students and strong students, we'll get to that. Okay, just give me a bit of time. Okay. Interpersonal intelligence usually makes one a good communicator because they can put themselves in the position of their interlocutor, in the position of other people, so they're sensitive to quite a few things. You might have seen this as emotional intelligence, okay? Intrapersonal usually distinguishes people who are self-aware and can work on their own, make decisions, and so on. Naturalistic has to do with what people call nature smart, people who have a particular affinity to all natural things. Okay, I'm running through this. Okay, this is very, very brief, so you could sort of look up things and get all the specifics. But basically what I'm trying to say is this is not just theory. These are studies, this is research that can help us. Yes, you deal with them as different learners, not as students, stereotyped students who are all the same. Absolutely. This is exactly what we're talking about. Something about reflect and share. How important are sociocultural... Why is my screen off? Is my screen off? Okay. How important are sociocultural... Okay, fine. I just got a comment from somebody. How important are sociocultural factors in L2 learning? Social factors, cultural factors. Are they important in second language learning? Yes, each student is different. We've established that. Yes, okay. Yes, they are, and it's important to know, to find out about them. If you're a teacher who is not very familiar with the local culture, you should find out about it. If you're a member of the local culture, then you should be open to finding out about other cultures. So we have differences, but what can help us communicate is to find what we share, because at the end of the day, as human beings, we do share quite a lot. And that's the basis of communication, okay? How important is self-esteem? To what extent does it affect the process of learning? Self-esteem? Very important. It's a great motive. Yes, yes, okay, fine. So we agree. It's very, very important. So this actually is something that we need to bear in mind, particularly when we label learners, or it should really make us think about how we treat learners, how we behave to learners. Okay, it would be a barrier. Yes, okay, fine. A self-esteem could really make or break learning here. It is very important. This is another reason why we should accept differences, and we should accept different abilities and different yes, it would affect their motivation, their desire to learn or not to learn, to participate or not to participate. Also given other pressures that you have mentioned previously, such as peer pressures, social pressures, and so on. Okay, so you try to demolish the barriers. Yes, encouragement is extremely important. Now, in order to encourage people, it's very, very important that you allow time for yourself to listen and observe rather than talk at them all the time. I'm sorry, as I've been doing. I apologize for that. So you can observe, listen, and aim at development. If you remember somebody raised this issue of development in relation with confident, less confident learners, what you might call strong, weak. I do try to avoid those labels because they're really loaded, and they mean they're labels that stereotype, and somehow they kind of stick. So it doesn't really help us to be inclusive. Yes, they can make, self-esteem can really help learners work and make progress and get on with their work, with their learning. In your view now, which factor or factors have the greatest impact on second language acquisition? By the way, I use the word acquisition and learning interchangeably. Okay, I'm not making a distinction between them. So learner factors, all of them. Intrinsic motivation, yes, understood. Okay. Desire, wanting to. Okay. So there aren't any specific factors that you think are more important than others. Well, classroom management is what we're really going to be looking at. Okay, so however, what we would like to consider is learners, abilities, yes, motivation. Yes, of course it's important. Okay, all right. Teacher beliefs, okay, that we need to deal with. Some of you might have seen some of these before. Inner desire to learn. Yes, that's self-motivated. Intrinsic motivation. Yes. Okay. These are some of the things that some teachers believe, some teachers say. Believing that every learner can learn. Thank you very much. If you're open to this, if you believe that every learner can learn, then every learner can learn and develop in your class. It's really important. Your attitude as a teacher changes, everything changes. So yes, I understand that you're under pressure because of the finals and the test and the grades, but again, that should go into a section that says final testing. It's very specific. And anyway, final testing, it can be included as an aim in learning in general. Okay, if you learn and develop, then you will be able to do better in your test. But we're not talking about assessment specifically. So what do you think of this? You should not be generous when you evaluate learners. It's better to mark them down rather than up. Thank you. No. Not true. Thank you. Thank you so much for disagreeing. Yes, absolutely. This is really one of the ongoing problems that a lot of students have. They feel that it's unfair because they put in an effort and nobody notices the effort. And they get their marks and their grades, and they've been marked down, and they wonder why. And didn't my teacher see that I could do things, that I had got better, that I had learned things? So please do think about this. It really goes against all the things that we've been discussing about encouragement and so on. I never give high marks when we start, so I can provide an incentive for students to try harder in order to get a higher mark. That's connected to the first one. Yeah? You agree? You never give high marks when you start? Okay, give them what they deserve. Fine. Give them what they deserve is fine. But, you know, manipulating their marks, their grades, thinking that way, through negative pressure, you're going to motivate them, is not necessarily given, okay? Actually, more people, more learners get discouraged through that rather than encouraged. Okay. Next thing, completely different. Yes, give them high degree to encourage them. Maybe okay. Encourage the weak ones, yes. Okay, I think spelling is very important. I always include dictation in tests and quizzes. What do you think? Why do you disagree? Yes, why do you disagree? Makes them afraid. Okay, yes, I'm afraid I will agree with you that spelling is not everything. It's not that important, whether we like it or not. Okay, we pay more attention to it at very initial levels. But as things develop in life, you know that there are people who are good at spelling and people who are bad at spelling. Also, we have spell checks. And given the fact that, as we have agreed in previous sessions, the way things are changing, most people will be keying in things rather than handwriting, so using computers or some device of some kind. It might not be that important. Okay, but you can actually use dictation or dictacom in tests or quizzes as very specific learning activities or very specific things like that. And also you might get them to listen and identify words and so on. But usually it's earlier stages. Students should remember grammar terms at this level so they can understand and follow instructions. Yes, I'm one of the worst to remember terms as well, quite honestly. Okay, we're not going to agree on this one. There's always a mix, yes or no. What I would suggest is that you always have examples next to the terms that you want to use. You always have an example. And remember, if students see the term and an example every single time, they will in the end remember it. But if you ask them to memorize the terms and understand them without examples, it's not going to work for a number of different people. I don't want students to work together and help each other. I find it confusing because I don't know who gave the right answer. Hello? What do you think of that? Yes, it's cooperative learning. Okay, once again, we need to establish this. We're not in the lesson sort of teaching, working online or working in the classroom to test people. We are there to help them learn. It doesn't matter who does the most work. Listen, we have one way. We have one way of. Sorry, your comments are coming in too fast. You have one way, or we have only one way of assessing, finding out how much is going on and how much students are learning and so on. And that, unfortunately, is very often through performance, what they can say, what they can do. This doesn't mean that other learners who are quieter are not learning. And also, collaboration is the way to deal with less confident and more confident learners. According to what you've been saying, weaker and stronger students. This is how we deal with it. And no, it doesn't hold the stronger students back, because I think you will agree with me that when you have to work with other people, put things into words, communicate ideas, communicate how to do things, you learn yourself. Yes, hearing the correct answer from his mate is learning, absolutely. So this is what we want. Teaching is not testing. We don't teach in order to test. We teach in order to help people learn. How can they understand if we don't translate? I don't want them to use dictionaries. I don't think they know how to use them. Hello? Disagree? Good. Good. I'm glad you disagree. Particularly this group, young adults, particularly where they're at, and quite honestly, quite early on, please help them learn how to use English to English dictionaries so they can be more independent. This is a time when everything is changing, and particularly in our field. Just to remind you that learners are exposed to the language through all the activities on the internet, through what they watch, through what they listen to, through what they see. So they develop language along the side. They're not only reliant on the classroom. Only in cases where students have no access should you think of sort of that as not possible, not being exposed. English to English, yes. Show them, yes, exactly what you said. Show them how to use the dictionaries. In other words, yes, technology makes it very easy, easier than before. You can use online dictionary, okay? And what you can do is, just as a matter of course, over a number of lessons, get 2 or 3 items with their definitions and examples on your screen or on the board if you're in class or project in class, and help them choose the definition that's appropriate for the context, for the topics that they're dealing with. Okay, just 2 or 3 items per day over a number of days will help them and will deal with any inhibitions they might have. Okay. Now we're getting into sort of a little more practical business. I'm not going to go into translation again, so we'll skip that unless you want to talk about translation. It's a different skill. Okay, setting up activities. Setting up activities can be the make or break of what you're doing in class. So how do you set up activities? Do you tell students what to do in Arabic in their L1? Good. No. No. Do you read the instructions? Sometimes, not at all. No. Do you ask students to read the instructions? Yes. Good. Yes. Look, reading and understanding instructions is a very sort of specific type of reading, yeah, and it's very intensive because usually instructions are very specific. Okay, they're supposed to show you how to do or tell you how to do something, and it's very realistic, and it's good for them to learn to read the instructions and understand what they need to do. You train them to understand. But if you never ask them to read silently and try to work out what they're going to do, then they'll never be able to cope with instructions. And come the time when they might have to take another test or an international test, they'll have to read instructions and understand them. Yes, icons, if there are icons, they help, okay? Do you check to make sure that learners are clear about what they have to do? Or do you just say, okay, work together in pairs and try to complete the sentences with appropriate collocations? Okay, you've got 3 minutes. We need to check, exactly. It's good to remember that, even if you think it's simple. Okay. Okay. Try to answer through an example, demonstrate, and so on. Okay. So if, sorry. Now, They ask for explanations. That's okay. Yes, check their understanding of instructions. Simply tell them, okay, ask someone else, okay, so what are you going to do? If they can't tell you in words, show me, okay? Let's do one of the items, all right? For everybody to listen. And again, hand over to the students as much as possible to optimize their speaking time, optimize thinking, keep them active, and get them to learn to listen to each other. Not because you say so, but because they have to. Now, because you've been talking a lot about grammar, and translation, and words, and so on, and questions, and I know that those of you who still insist on going through every single text and translating, also ask very specific questions about almost every sentence of the text. So I would like you to please do something so we can discuss how helpful that is. Or not. Okay, look at text 1. In this text, there are words that are nonsense words. The grammar is correct, and structurally it's appropriate. Yeah? Could you try and have a look at it for yourself silently? You think it's exhausting for a student to do everything? This is for you. It's a little experiment for you, because I want to stress something here. Okay, so, no, of course you can't understand anything. It's meaningless, even difficult to read. Thank you. All right, now, let me read it then. What's that? Okay, a text that has correct grammar, but silly words. But it can be answered absolutely, Mona. So, splintering is one of the rubbliest methods of frinkling chippers. By indigenously grambling the chippers in a chipper gramber, excrubious chippers may successfully be frinkled in a very dinkable period of time. Chipper frinklers are well gribbled at all times because of the very real danger and infringement of the wobbler, a condition believed at one time to have been unfrumpable. It's not a matter of spelling, it's silly words, nonsense words. Now let's look at the questions and see if you can answer them. You say there's no meaning, right? Look at the first question. What is the rubbliest method of chipper frinkling? Can you answer it? Thank you very much. Splintering. Okay? Yes, you can. Look at the second question. How may chippers successfully be frinkled? How may chippers grambling? Okay, by grambling. Yes, it's here. So what you have to do, you have to look at it, find the words that are taken from this, look at the grammar, yeah? Use grammar to help you extract the word that gives the answer without understanding anything. Let's do one more. Why are chipper sprinklers well gribbled? Okay. Because of the very real danger of inflation. Yes, you can't answer because it doesn't make sense, but what I'm trying to show you is that if you insist on very traditional methods that are connected with grammar translation and wanting to exhaust every single sentence of your text through a question, your students can answer those questions by simply extracting the word that gives the answer grammatically, if you like. They just find the words, extract the word that gives them the answer without understanding. Exactly. So this is the point I'm trying to make. Again, the point that I'm trying to make here is that if you insist on the working sort of and through very traditional methods, and you insist on working through texts and exhausting, sort of analyzing every single word, or not, but translating and then following up each text with a question about every sentence, you know what I'm talking about. WH questions about every sentence. Thus, your learners can answer those questions without understanding anything in the text. They extract. Yes, students read without translation. Good. Okay? All your students can read without translation. Because that's what they have to do on the internet as well. There's nobody to translate for them. So I hope this has been a little experiment for you to see what happens if you mechanically ask a question about each sentence. Okay? Yes, we talk about scanning and skimming because we approach reading in a different way. It's interactive reading with an active mind. I'm specifically addressing this, but they use online translators. How good are online translators? Do they make sense? If you have a little text or sentences and you have them translated, do they make sense? No, thank you. So show them that it doesn't make sense, so they don't rely on them. Okay? So if we are to think about what we just did with the nonsense words and the mechanical kind of answers that we gave, did it involve critical thinking? No. Did it involve creativity? No. Understanding, comprehension? No. Any decision making? No, no. Did learners have to justify their answers? No. Did they have to make a choice? Maybe no. Maybe the choice is from which word to extract? Yes. Okay, fine. So how useful is this type of exercise, practice, if you like? We want to make people think, not useful. We want to make people think at all times, okay? Because that's how learning takes place. Okay, let's have a look at this. Yesterday, I saw the new patient hurrying along the corridor. She seemed very upset, so I did not follow her, just called to her gently. Perhaps later she will feel better and I will be able to talk to her. Okay? Who do you think is saying this? Yes. Who do you think is saying this? Possibly a nurse, medic, okay? What makes you think it's somebody who's had something to do with medicine, doctor and nurse? What helped you decide that the person who is saying this is probably someone who has to do with medicine, a nurse, a doctor? The word patient. So through the word patient, you built up a good part of the context. Yes, thank you. You built up the context, and where do you think this is taking place? What kind of scene did you visualize? What's the schema in your mind? An emergency, hospital, and so on. And that is through the word patient, okay, referring to the word patient, okay, referring to the person as a patient. Okay. Is the event taking place indoors or outdoors? Clinic, yes. Indoors, how do you know that? Which word gives you that information? Indoor. Corridor. Yes, thank you. The corridor. So it's indoors. Did the writer try to get near the patient? No, not as far as I know. What do you think she said when she called to the patient? She did call to her. What do you think she said? Maybe she called her by name. Maybe she said, excuse me, yes. The patient didn't answer. Gently. Okay, fine, miss. Good. What might the job of the writer be? Of the speaker? You've already answered this. A psychologist. Okay, can I help you? A nurse, a doctor. Okay, what you said before. Is all that information given explicitly in what you have just read? No, it's not. So how do you know? How do you come to through the context? But you build up the context. You use clues, so you fill in all the missing information through the context because those contexts are familiar to you through experience, life, and so on. This is exactly what we want to get people to do in order to think. Okay, you might say, not this kind of exercise all the time. No, of course not, but this kind of little exercise would help. So this is very different from the first one, isn't it? So think about disadvantages traditional comprehension questions may have, like the ones that you saw before. Okay, yes, you have to think in order to answer, and you have to use your knowledge and your experience to fill in the gaps, if you like. Okay, I don't want to carry on too long with this. Okay, collaborative learning. I know some people are not very happy about this. So, some of you have seen this before, but let me go through it. Basic interaction patterns, okay, of how you work in class. What you know. Okay, yes? Teacher to student. Yes, this is the traditional way. We still use it, however, when you want to present something new, present new language, give instructions, begin giving instructions, talking, reporting back, giving feedback to the class. There are occasions when you do that, right? And when you're online, stage on stage, yes. Yes, okay, in lecture, yes, absolutely, sorry. Online, yes, online, unfortunately, a lot of this happens if people don't try to get students to practice in pairs or groups. Now, this to student pair work, open pairs, yes, but this is open pairs. This is a class. If you're in class, in other words, you ask two people, you say, okay, Nasir and Badr. Nasir and Badr. Okay, so you go Nasir and Badr for an exchange, to ask an answer or to do part of a conversation or to do part of a dialogue. And then you ask other pairs and other pairs, and everybody can hear. Yes, it is cooperation, but it's open class and you can hear. And usually you do this earlier. If you're presenting something new, you do it earlier because you can listen, you can get other students to correct. You can call on another student to correct, or you can correct yourself. Peer correction is always a good idea. Online, you usually nominate. You use the names, yeah, of the people to call them out. Tell this person to work with this person, for example. This is student to student in closed pairs. And this is often what scares teachers, because we like to feel that we're controlling everything. Okay. Face to face. In groups is fine. In groups, so somebody's if in groups, sitting in groups is good. Yes, of course, sitting in groups is good. But okay, let's have a look at this. This is another option. Closed pair. Okay. After you have presented, practiced, and so on, I'm thinking of a language of language focus, yeah, or something that deals with functions appropriacy, say after a conversation, and you want them to practice. You want everybody to practice at the same time. In class, you have to treat, yes, it is the best way to make the most of the time you have. It optimizes time, speaking time for the students. In class, again, you train them, you tell them to speak quietly to one another. They don't have to shout, because if they shout, there's going to be a huge amount of noise, and some people will complain. What does the teacher do? The teacher moves around constantly. You listen to what they're doing. You try not to interfere. You guide people if they need help. You support. But you also make notes. Exactly. You monitor. You make notes, okay, of what you hear, maybe of interesting things that you hear, things that they can do that you didn't think they could. Any mistakes that you think you could go back to and deal with the whole class. Delayed correction, yeah, not immediate correction. Okay, and there are different occasions when you do this: exchanging, sharing information, interviews, role plays, which was mentioned already, lead-in activities, brainstorming, working out possible answers, doing checking exercises, working together, okay? Now, online, you can do this if you have breakout rooms, channels, chat rooms, okay? Otherwise, you'll have to you're restricted to open pairs, which is a shame. Okay, students to students in groups. I'll go back to the difference. I know it's confusing between open and closed pairs. Students to students in groups. All the groups, you form groups, you give everybody the task, you set up the task, you set up the groups, and the students work together. It's a good idea to assign roles within the groups, okay? So your roles might be somebody who is the coordinator, the note taker, the secretary, the whatever, if you think it's going to work. Yes, the leader, but somebody should be taking notes, okay? You can set a time limit if you want. Yes, pair and share, okay. Group work, I think, is great, okay? It's the best way of, because you pool knowledge, you pool ideas, okay? It's creative, it's critical, gives them the chance to practice more, to use the language. You get them to use, yes, teams, you form teams. You get them to use the language, okay, this has to be done in English, and you walk around and push them and make sure they do that. Busy hive, yes. Change roles and so on. And again, you move around, you monitor. It's hard to focus for whom? For the teacher? Well, teachers need to multitask most of the time. It's part of the job, isn't it? No, it's not. You can move around. This is how you know what your learners are learning. This is how you find out if there is development. Okay? Not if you stand sort of in front of the class and lecture. Okay, there were requests about distinguishing between closed pairs and open pairs. So this is student to student in open pairs across the class. Okay, so if you are in a classroom, this person speaks to this person and everybody in class can hear. And the teacher can hear, okay? This is good for controlled practice in newly taught language. Teachers tell students to whom they should speak. Teacher can listen and help or correct or call on other students to correct. Okay, yes, it can be a whole chain. So that's in open pairs. So everybody can hear what's going on. And it is more controlled. Closed pairs is a bit later, a bit after the very more controlled stage of your lesson. When you ask students to work in pairs, for example, work in pairs and interview each other and make a note of the answer, yeah, and then report in class. Okay, that's done in closed pairs. In other words, all the students are working simultaneously, interviewing one another and taking notes. They don't stop and listen to other pairs. You don't stand in the middle and listen to everybody. Okay? They work simultaneously. This is group work, okay? It's closed pairs. It can be closed pairs or groups. These are closed as well. So everybody works at the same time. Why do I keep on insisting? I know this session is not going to be enough to convince everybody, but think about it. You have mentioned time and again that you have very little time in class. How can you possibly optimize that time in class if you don't work in a collaborative manner, so that you can optimize the time? These are particularly this type of management is what gives us a bit more time, gives learners actually more time to practice, to do things, and let them think and pool knowledge. This is totally sort of, if you like, flipped roles. When a student presents something to the whole class, or a team, 2 or more students, present something to the whole class. Okay, online, breakout rooms or flipped roles, you allow the student or the pair if they're together to host and present to the rest of the group. So you see, there are ways of doing this online as well. So if you want to make your lesson more learner-centered, more critical, more creative, there's always a way to do it, and the material is appropriate for that. Again, it's very important that we activate learner knowledge, not only of language, but everything. All this type of knowledge. We've talked about this before. So knowledge is something that evolves, okay? It's, I can't help think about Chomsky, actually, his growth theory, okay? But basically, it's really at the basis of quite a few learning theories and approaches, okay? In other words, learning is not a matter of intake. It's a matter of building up on knowledge that's already there. And inevitably, if somebody is around and alive and has been living and so on, they inevitably have knowledge from personal, social, from experience, general, specific, and so on and so forth, depending on who they are. So focus on the learners, access knowledge sources through images, questions, statements, other tasks. Okay. Pairs, groups can pool knowledge, yeah, combine knowledge, exchange knowledge, allow thinking time for students. Don't address a question at the whole class, because the same person will answer every time, or the same people will answer every time, or nobody will answer. Especially if you've been testing all the time, all the questions you ask are interpreted as tests by the students, and they will avoid answering any questions, regardless of how personalized they might be. Slide 24, please. Yes. Okay. Right. You have a handout. Yeah? What I'd like you to look at is the handout on learning, enabling learning, making the most of knowledge resources, and so on. All right. I hope you've all found it. I'm sorry I didn't, I got the numbers wrong. I put session 2, it's not session 2, it's session 5.
It will say session 5, handout 1 for you. I'm sorry for the audience. So it's going to say session 5, handout 1. That's the one that I'm referring to.
Thank you, Suresh.
No problem.
Okay. Thanks. All right. So you can see that it begins, if you found it, it talks about setting up activities, instructions that we've already kind of talked about. And I can't repeat enough. Get them to read instructions silently, okay? Don't forget that being able to understand and follow instructions is a very, very useful function in the educational as well as a social and professional context. Teacher talk, speaking time, rephrase, repeat, demonstrate, use visuals or minds, etc. as required to help students understand. But allow students who know or are confident to do things in class or explain things in class instead of doing, speaking, doing everything yourself, okay? So think of this. Every time we do something that we could potentially ask a student or students to do, we deprive students of an opportunity to be active, to learn, to practice. So try not to deprive them of the opportunity. Please do not echo. I think we have mentioned this before. Yeah, don't repeat what every student says, because then students will not try to listen to each other, but only listen to you. Checking understanding and so on. There are quite a few different areas in your handout, so please do look through them if you're interested. Be interested. Look through them and think about them. Okay. And going back to the material. So what we're talking about here is, let's look at this very first thing, and then I know I have to wrap it up soon. Okay, look at this. The very first thing. What things that we take for granted today did people not have 100 years ago? How would you set this up? Okay. Name a discovery or development that you think people will have or use 100 years from now. You can set this up for everybody to discuss both questions, or you can do it one at a time, or you can split the questions and ask different groups to do it. So basically, here, the best way of doing this is getting students to work in groups. If groups are impossible, then get them to work in pairs. But they need to combine knowledge. And if they do that, it's not going to take very long. And also, you're going to keep them active. You're going to keep them thinking, that you're going to activate knowledge that they have. They'll exchange ideas, knowledge. All this should be done in English. You don't interrupt. You don't correct every grammar mistake as you move around your class or as you listen in. Okay, so they can carry on. Critical thinking. Do you want a definition? because if you want a specific definition, I'll look at it. Okay, basically when we think critically, we have to fill in gaps, we have to think of solutions, we have to think of different choices, we have to rationalize, we have to analyze, we have to synthesize, okay? We do all of those things. It's not very important for them to know about every single thing there, but in theoretically, but basically it involves thinking, yeah? Thinking, using what you know, learning new things, trying out new things, okay? Very, very important. And critical thinking is extremely old, yeah? It comes from ancient Greece, actually, and before. Okay, yes, finding the main idea requires that kind of thought. Okay, now in conversation, okay, you want them to listen to this, yes? Yes, encourage the students to form their own opinion. How do you set this up? Okay, if you want, you can use the questions here for them to listen, so they listen once. Then you could, if you want, give them this conversation with blanks and get them to try and recall what they can, if you want. You don't have to do that. Get them to listen again, okay? Act out if you want. But the thing is, real talk will give you words. Persuading will give you functional language, okay? So we've got some focus here. Get them to try and practice this as best they can. And then your turn, role play with a partner. So you see quite a few of these, quite a few of the items in your book that requires listening, require thinking, speaking, and so on, are appropriate for pair work, group work, okay, and require students to use what they're learning in order to communicate. And this is what we want. Make drilling and a role play. Well, if you want to drill it beforehand when it's in very controlled stages, quite honestly. I think we're running out of time, unfortunately.
Yes, unfortunately.
Okay, let me go back. Make it short. Yes, sir, I will. Okay. Engage learners, build up on knowledge, think. Okay. Challenge, activate, anticipate, elicit, collaborate, hand over to the students. Let them do things. Don't do everything yourself. Flip, research, generate, update, reward, withhold, plan, optimize, involve, encourage, develop, facilitate. So if you want thinking learners, active minds, really it's a matter of how you manage your learners, how you manage your lessons, how you manage learning, how you manage your materials that will make that happen. But what I'd like to say once again is you do have the materials to do that. You do have them in your course book. It's not a grammar translation course book. And what you have there, thank you, Abdallah. And as for you, well, you have to be a good communicator as well. Communicate, coordinate, facilitate, mediate, step back and listen. The most important thing for anybody to be an effective communicator is to be an active listener. If you don't listen, you're not going to be able, okay, sorry, we've got a question here. If the student made a mistake in speaking or answered incompletely, should I correct the mistake for him? If they're working in pairs, encourage his peer to complete or help him, try to elicit, guide him to complete. Okay, so when I say withhold, sorry, thank you for asking that. Somebody raised, yes, if you can listen, that means you can withhold. What I mean by withhold is when you withhold information, okay? So when you begin with a topic, don't start lecturing about the topic. Ask them. And you have those questions there. This is what you do. You withhold information. You get them to think and supply what's missing. Remember the little example with the patient where you had to infer? How is that created? Through implicature. How is implicature created? There's something missing. There's a gap there. Not everything is stated explicitly. I know I'm simplifying. I don't want to go into Grice's maxims now. Okay? So, once again, listen, it's a great job, yeah? I don't think, I would be happy doing anything else but what we've been doing and learning. And the most important thing is that we can continue learning as well. And the learners can actually teach us quite a lot if you observe and listen to them. And you have been absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much. I hope I have the chance to communicate with you again. And have a great weekend. Have a great time. Try to enjoy teaching. It can be very enjoyable and very rewarding for us too. Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Danai. Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for your valuable time in joining us today for the last session for our webinar series. This was session 5. We don't have a session in the afternoon today. So yeah, I guess this is the end. I'd also like to thank Ministry of Education, Saudi Arabia and Tatweer for their support and in all these webinar series that we have come along so far for elementary, intermediate, and secondary. And thank you everyone for being such an amazing audience and the interactive comments that you've given, the questions. And we hope the secondary teacher training were useful to you. Thank you, Danai, for your valuable time and being patient with us.
Thank you to you, thank you to Tatweer, thank you to the ministry, thank you to everybody, absolutely. I can see some messages from people that I have worked with before, and I miss you too, and I'm so glad to have communicated with the rest of you, and I do hope, the crisis that we're all going through around the world is over at some point. And I do hope to be there soon and be able to see you. Thank you so much.
Hopefully, yes, definitely. And last but not the least, our wonderful moderators who have been an integral part of running these webinars so smoothly and helping out. So thanks a lot. There are a few questions that have come in and some of you might be waiting for them, but I just wanted to say the thank yous earlier because you guys might log off to classes and other urgent things. So if you want to leave, you can leave right now. How can we contact you if you have a question? Reach out to your administrator maybe and they will get in touch, I suppose. But yeah, thank you, Danai. We can move on to the Q&A. So really quickly, I won't cover a lot. We can go with 3 perhaps. So the first one is, how can we differentiate content for different types of learners through Mega Goal since all students must use the same books?
Sorry?
Oh, sorry. I will say that again. How can we differentiate content for different types of learners through Mega Goal since all students must use the same books?
Well, you're given many opportunities to differentiate, even through those lead-in questions, for example, in the lessons that I showed you. You're not going to get the same answers from everybody, so this is how you differentiate. Yeah?
Yep. And the second one is, lots of questions on certificates. So before I go on to the second question, let me just cover that out. You will receive the certificate via email. As I mentioned earlier, this is going to come in next week or the following week, so please be patient. You will get a certificate for each session that you have attended. We are just trying to sort it out because if for those of you who have logged in using your colleague's link, it's going to have their certificate on the name, so we're just trying to see how that will work. But yes, you will get the certificate via email. I repeat, on your email, so you will be able to download it from your email. Please expect it to come in 2 weeks' time. And please spread this word to your colleagues as well. Moving on to question number 2, we've got, in general, what are the most important strategies to attract students during the lesson? I think we've covered quite a bit of these.
I think this is exactly what we've talked about. Thank you for that. I got a bit of advice. It's not everything you do is a grammar lesson. We're not talking about grammar translation. Okay? I don't know what else to say. We've been discussing this. Yeah?
Yep. And the last one we have is, if the text is a higher level for my students, how can I manage this issue?
Okay. One of the things that we mentioned, again, I mean, we touched upon some subjects that we haven't got the time to deal with in detail, but do you remember what we said, that people can understand more than they can produce? And this is good. It's good for us to remember. We do exactly the same thing in mother tongue as well. I mean, think about in Arabic, for example. You read articles. Do you write articles yourself all the time? You listen to people presenting something. Do you all present? But you don't have a problem following, okay, and so on and so forth. So what we're interested in is using what the learners know, because we know that when people have to read or listen and understand, it's important for them to have active knowledge in their minds, not to just listen for language, but try to understand using the knowledge they have. This helps people understand language that they might not use.
Yeah, makes sense.
I can't, and we haven't got the time to do more than that, I'm afraid. Yeah?
It's all right. Yeah. And the people are asking if they can leave. Yes, you're free to leave. Don't worry about this. We are just covering Q&A for people who want to stay back and have asked these questions. So we've covered 3. I think that's done. Oh, there's one who has come twice. How many new words can we give them in a day?
There is no perfect answer to this, okay? You get all kinds of numbers like 8, 9, 10, 12, but you don't give them the words. The words are presented in context, in the text. Some of the words are key, as you can see in the tasks that you have. So those are obviously relevant. There might be some more. But the rest of the words that might come up are not words for them to necessarily learn to use productively. They can be receptive. They're there for them to understand. Not everything is productive vocabulary. Okay?
Yeah. Dana, you've answered this before. I'm sorry, I'm pressing you because maybe this person thinks it's important. How do I teach the lesson? And I know we covered this yesterday, but just in a short time, how do I teach the lesson, conversation, listening, pronunciation, and vocabulary? Should I teach them each in its own time and class, for example, 4 classes?
No.
Yeah.
No, this is not supposed to be dealt with in 4 classes. 1. And actually look at what is involved in each section. There might be sections that you think are very easy, you just zip through. You have to plan. There's no other way of doing this. And you shouldn't analyze every single word on the page, and you shouldn't translate, and you shouldn't ask your students to learn every single word in English and Arabic, because that's not going to help them use this language as a global medium, and it's not even going to help them in exams, if you think about it.
Yep.
And use your teacher's guide, please. Teacher's guide, please.
Important top tip that Danai has given us. Please use your teacher's guide. Thank you so much, Danai, for being so sweet and patient with us. And thank you, everyone. We hope to see you soon again, hopefully, inshallah. Have a great weekend, and thank you for joining us. And thank you for all the lovely comments that are coming in. You're very, very welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much.